Okay, this is a koala activity. It's called How Many Can an Ecosystem Sustain? And it's about carrying capacity. And so you're going to need your student sheet that looks like this. How many can an ecosystem sustain? And you notice it says generation 1 all the way up through generation 11. And then it has an initial population is what you start with, the number that survive, the number of offspring, and the final population. So we're going to start with 3 koalas. And each koala, every 2 koalas will produce an offspring, but every koala needs to have a water card. They got to have water. One water. They got to have space in order to live, so they got to have a space card. And they have to have a food card in order to survive. So every koala that we start with has to have a space card, a food card, and a water card. So we're going to go ahead and give our first koala a space card, a food card, and a water card. And I basically have a stack of each of those. Here's my water cards. Here's my space cards. And here are my food cards. And there's a different number of things for each one of those. So my 3 koalas I start with, they each get a food card, a space card, and a water card. A food card, a space card, and a water card. So there's my 3 koalas. They all survived because there were enough resources for them to survive. So on my form, in my first generation, I'm going to start, my initial population is going to be 3. And I see that all of them survive. So I'm going to put 3 survive. And the number of offspring. So every 2 koalas will produce an offspring. So because I have 3, that means I've got 1 more koala that will be produced off of those 3 koalas. So I have 1 offspring. And so my final population that is still here is going to be 4. So I've got 3 koalas that were initial, plus 1. I have a final population of 4 koalas. Okay, so now, then when I go to my next generation, I'm now starting with how many koalas? I'm starting with 4. So my initial population is 4. And we're going to see if they survive. So I'm going to give this new koala a food card, a water card, and a space card, food, space, and water card. And there's plenty of that left for that koala. So now I have, how many koalas survived out of this round? Well, all of them. So 4 koalas survived. And then, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this up here like this. So I see I've got 4 koalas. How many offspring am I going to produce? Every 2 koalas produces 1 offspring. So I've got 1 for that and 1 for that. So how many offspring did they produce? They produced 2 offspring. And so now my final population of koalas is 6. I have 6 koalas. So my next round, I'm going to start with 6 koalas, and we'll see if those koalas survive. So let's see, I still have plenty of food, water, and space. So I'm going to give each one of them a food, water, and space card. Hopefully this will work. So I've got food for these 2 koalas. I've got enough space for these 2 koalas to live, and I've got enough water for these 2 koalas to live as well. And so this is fun because this environment is thriving. And so how many do I have surviving? I started with 6, and all 6 of them are still able to survive that in that environment. So I'm going to go ahead and, just for the sake of space here so that you can see it, I'm going to put my cards on top. We're going to assume there's still enough each time, instead of, you know, distributing it out again. I'm going to do it like this so you can see it. So there's my 4 koalas. Here's Koala, the 2 offspring that were produced. And now, as we said before, every time you have 2 koalas, you produce an offspring. So now I've got 1 that's produced between those 2, 1 that's produced there, and 1 that's produced there. So I'm going to produce 3 offspring. I started with 6. Every 2 produces an offspring, so I've got 3. So my final population is 9 koalas. So this is now, again, on the next generation. We're on generation 4, 9 koalas. How many are going to survive? So I've got my cards. I'll move them over here so you can kind of see my cards. I'm getting lower on my space in my water cards, but I still got quite a bit. So each one of these is going to get food. Each one of these is going to get space, because there's space still for them to live. And each one of these is going to get a water card. So far, we haven't reached the carrying capacity of the environment, because the number that are going to survive is all of them. So all 9 of them survived, and the number of, we haven't done their offspring, but all 9 of these koalas were able to survive. So we're going to move these up here just for the sake of space and being able to show this to you. This is pretty fun activity when you're in the classroom. It gets a little crazy, but we all have different environments, so there's a different amount of food, water, and space in each one, but we're just going to do one environment for this demonstration. So we've got 9 koalas. Every time you have 2 koalas, you get an offspring. So there's 1 for that one, 1 for that one, 1 for that one. You can see the population is just rapidly increasing because we've had a lot of space and water and food, so they're thriving. And so now we went from 9 to 9 plus 4 is plus, so there's 4 more offspring, and now we have a total population of 13 koalas. So we're going to start with 13 and see how they survive. And so let's see about food. So we have food for each one of these, and we've got space for each one of these, although space is getting kind of limited. And then we've got water for each one of these as well. So space, my table's not big enough. Space, food, we'll move this back just a little bit. Food and water for each koala. Generation. Woohoo! These usually take up our whole science table in the classroom. We'll squeeze these koalas in there. Okay, so now we are on the 5th generation of koalas, and we're looking to see how many survives. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And all 13 of them had enough resources, so the number of koalas that survived is 13. And every 2 koalas produces 1, so the population is just exploding at this point. And so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more koalas, so 13 plus 6 is 19. The number of offspring was, sorry, I wrote it wrong. The number of offspring is 6. So 13 plus 6 is a population of 19 koalas now. So in the 6th generation, we've got 19 koalas. And we are really quickly running out of space. So I'm gonna give the space to the koalas that I have. So now I've got all of my space cards are used, and my food cards are getting kind of limited as well. I have only about 6 more food cards, and I have no more space left for these koalas to live. And I've got water. Water is in abundant supply. We're probably in a rain, forest type setting or something like that, at least something like that. And so now you've got all these koalas that survived. Every single one of our koalas has survived here. So I'm going to group these into 2s just because I don't have very much room here. And we just have a huge population of koalas happening. So that's 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, plus this one that's kind of like an outlier. So we've got these pairs of koalas. Okay, so now, we started with 19, and they have all survived in this generation. Luckily, there was just enough space for them. And now we gotta see how many offspring are they going to produce. So these 2, 2, 2, those 2, these 2, these 2, these 2, these 2, and these 2 all produce offspring. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 offspring. Boy, our population just really started to explode. So we've got 9 offspring. So 19 plus 9. 19 plus 9 is 28. So you see how the population just exploded there in about the 3rd generation. So we have 28. So we're starting with, in the 7th generation, 28 koalas. And we got to see if they'll survive. But we know that the ones that were just born probably won't. So we've got enough food for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And the other 3, basically, these ones have already starved to death. We have enough water. We have enough water for all of those if they had enough food. But we have no more space. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of these koalas, these new baby koalas, have perished because they don't have, half of them don't have enough space, and they don't have enough food to survive. And so we have only the adults that have survived, assuming that they still had those supplies. So we have all of the babies that we had did not survive, so only 28 of them. Sorry, only 19 of them. 19 of those 28 have survived, and they're starting to fall off. And so those 19, again, are going to produce 9 offspring as well, but they're not going to have enough resources to get them by because there's no more space left for them. And so basically our population has pretty much leveled out at around 19. So if we keep going, all the babies are going to continue to die, and you can tell that we have reached our carrying capacity of that environment at 19. No more than 19 can survive total. So that population going over 19 caused the environment not to work very well. So there you go. So this is a demonstration of carrying capacity. There has to be enough food, water, and shelter for each of those koalas to survive. And when you start to not have enough space, or you start to not have enough water, or you start to not have enough food, you have what's called competition for the resources, and your population reaches its maximum capacity of being able to carry that population without organisms dying off. So there you go. 19 is our carrying capacity.